I'd like to just take you through this tab here, Presentation Reports, and it contains a lot of new features that hopefully help you navigate and understand the KPI cleaning scorecards that we take on a daily basis. Let's just cut to the chase and start looking at some results. So this is the weekly report. And we're going to have a look at some results on a week-by-week basis. This is the train service. This is the week starting. This is the number one fault in that week, which gave rise to the highest number of points, gave rise to 255 points, and the total points collected on the whole unit for all the faults is this number here. This was early days, so there weren't many trains being checked at that time. We'd maybe scoot down till we're into full flow. So let's maybe by the end of the year, we were doing a lot more trains. So if I use this drill down button, we can look at this week of data, Christmas 2019, and we're going to drill down to the underlying KPI scorecards. So what this is doing now is pulling out all the information that's relevant. And in fact, the relevant information here, this is one unit that was cleaned at Stoke Gifford. I've actually ordered these as well in terms of high scoring. So these are probably the most interesting. That's what I've tried to do. So that as we run down the table, these score less points and are probably less interesting. But what we can see here is who's done the work and when it was done. And we could also see if people had uploaded photos, any photos would appear here. So that's quite a good. If we encourage people to use the photo upload feature, then I think that might make the reports a little bit more interesting. If we just have a look at one of the reports now, we'll go into this particular one here. So this is data that people are used to seeing. There's these are the toilet checks that are done, and down here there's all the cars, and we note down where a fault occurs. So we've got a problem here on car number 6, and we've also got the same problem on car number 2. So on car number 7 there's obviously no toilets, so there's no points picked up there. What we've got here, we've got a clause number, which is interesting as well, because I use those in some of my reports. This is the detail of the actual check that's been made. So this underlies everything, but as you can see, in this particular week, I think somewhere we do a counting of how many were scored. Yeah, okay. In that particular week, there was 139 checks made, and the total score here was nearly 29,000. So that's how we go to the underlying scorecards. I'm going to just jump back to my, so this is the weekly report, if you remember, and I'm going to maybe just open up, maybe we go to the same day. Was it Christmas? Christmas. We'll look at this one here. So like all MyRaps reports, if we click into GWML, then it should open the report and highlight where that piece of information has come from. So it has highlighted GWML. It's come from the header page. And in here we can see that's the date. And this is actually 1 to 10. These are ranking all the faults, but the top 10 are here. The location breakdown is for the top 10. We've got the top 10 reports there, and we've got this is where the work was, the faults were found, and we've got here a total for each depot. So that's a piece of information that's quite interesting. And then we've got some of the detailed numbers here. Here we're doing a summing of all the toilet damage, and so this is area by area summation. It's also day by day, and we've got quite a bit of information there to interrogate. And here we've got the detailed breakdown for, here's Swansea for days 1 to 7, Stoke Gifford for days 1 to 7. So we've got a very detailed breakdown here of all the underlying data. So all those scorecards, all the 139 scorecards were done, are all being aggregated onto this form. And this is how we go about pulling data into our weekly report and into these MyRaps reports. So that kind of explains how we generate the data and where the data comes from. But what we've got here as well, we can show you this information as a tabular way, which is what we've got here. And we've got lots of filters on here as well. So if we were only interested in Great Western, then we would just put Great Western in there. It would filter out all the Great Western results. So you could put East Coast Mainline in there to look at just East Coast Mainline. These filters work on all the data, so you can play around with that to your heart's content. You can also click on these, and that will sort from lowest to highest or highest to lowest, depending so you click it once, it's lowest to highest, and click it a second time, it's highest to lowest. So that all helps as well. What we've broken down here is the number of points in the toilet area and the passengers' saloon and vestibules, staffing areas, catering areas, that kind of thing. So when I look at the same information in my graphical view, what I've done is I've just stacked up these scores here in a bar chart. So we're going to look at how each area contributed to the total damage for each train. So this is the total damage scored in the week. So obviously the total damage depends on how many trains that you're servicing at any one time. There's probably more trains come into the regime than there was in earlier days. So peaks can be explained by that. Sudden drop-offs can be explained by things like COVID-19. That's the effect of COVID-19 there, and we're recovering from that slightly. So the other thing we can do is we can't see East Coast Mainline there, but if we zoom in, what I'm going to do is just drag this in here, and we're going to zoom into this bottom area of the chart. This is now showing Great Western and East Coast together. So it's just the fact that you zoom out, we've lost some of the detail there. We can reset the zoom. The other thing we can do is we can hover over this one here. So this is saying it's item number 2, and it's the passenger saloon vestibule area, and it was on East Coast Mainline, and it picked up 37,000 points. This one here is external checks 1, and the little one here is the catering area. Catering area seems to be doing quite well. It always seems to contribute a little bit. So it gives us a nice view of the data. If we can reset the zoom there as well. So we've got tabular view, and we've got the chart view here. Let's just jump back to the presentation page, because we're going to look at another report now. This time, it's built on the same underlying data, but in this case, I'm actually more interested in what issues have made it to the top 10. Because if we just consider the top 10 problems for any week, then it means that all the stuff that isn't a problem, we can concentrate on those things that are adding to our problems more. So it's a good way of focusing in, really. So what we've got here is possibly a more complicated data. It's giving us the clause number of the number 1 failure that week, and this is the number of points it scored. This is number 2, and it goes all the way to number 10. That isn't very useful, or it's quite hard to see trends in that. But if you go to the graphical view, then we can possibly see better trends in our data and get more understanding of what's happening on the ground if we look at this chart view. So I'm going to look at one particular thing here now. I'm going to look at clause 12, and if I just go Control F, clause 12, then we can see here how clause 12 in this week was the number 1 issue, and then it dropped to the number 3 issue. So we can see how these, and you can actually see here that clause 12 didn't even make it into the top 10 for these ones here. So we've obviously got some improvement. What we can look at as well, if I go back to the presentation report, I'll just give this is a weekly report with a depot by depot breakdown. And again, we can look at this in a tabular view with all the filter controls and sorting controls, and we can also look at it in a tabular view, which will give us, which will show us how depots are performing against each other, and who's identifying more issues with the train. So I'm just going to scoot down there. So it's a very similar kind of presentation of data. Now, these scorecards are going to be produced automatically every week, because we've got a new scheduling feature now which will make these things happen all the time without you having to do anything. So all you have to do is go to the presentation page and have a look at the results when you fancy having a look at your data and trying to find some insights into it. Okay, thank you for listening.